GDP was up 5%. Still to come on the News Hour, a Palestinian-American artists exhibit in Indiana is
leaded to it. Well, one thing that I think is really notable here is that the traditional humanitarian organizations seem not to have been involved at all. So this did not involve the UN Relief and Works.
Effective against cancer as a relentless succession of breakthroughs. Go to danafarber.org.
Had to travel with coyotes and we had a small child.
I cried
patronizing at a cost.
When the Luddites are called machine breakers, these are the machines they're breaking.
Yes.
You mentioned a lot of what we've been seeing since the fall of Roe v. Wade. Where do you see this ruling in terms of the trend we've seen since then when it comes to reproductive rights?
That's a lot of jobs.
And plenty of much
sit-ins, teach-ins, a venue in town is putting on.
To seek asylum in a safe way and not put
someone who is currently 15 weeks pregnant with my miracle IVF baby.
Rather than had to drag him overnight to the hospital, the 5-year-old had caught shrapnel in the face. He ended up losing.
We eat cactus, even with its thorns.
Providing IVF treatment. So do all of those things combine?
Customs and border protection.
I want a better
thing of Gaza in response to the October 7th Hamas.
Worried about what she called a domino effect, that other states could...
process of harnessing technology.
They residents to brace themselves for the damage.
It's who are trying to block this to take effect. And
a lot of people have been able to move out of the way. With Rafah, there's nowhere left to go.
Different from public opinion. And public opinion wants answers and wants a decision on these issues.
The part to look at here is that, of course, Donald Trump wants to make a general election with Joe Biden all about immigration. It's something that he is
falling into a trap.
Right. That has flowed into the Senate, it's flowed into...
Round that prompted this scene of mass pandemonium. The Israeli military has a very different...
Mitch McConnell and his people are ruthless.
Entitlements are to Democrats, where whatever solution that you've come to, it's never going to be good enough. And
newer and younger senators in the Republican
times, no question that the president has influence within.
Many of them are.
The House is trying to turn a political vulnerability into an opportunity to hammer Republicans for tanking a bill that addressed the crisis, all because.
So this would be happening amidst a civilian population in a literal tent camp. It would be devastating.
The news hit, and I'm just pleading and hoping that the lawmakers will just listen.
My name is Emily Capaluto. I'm 30.
Crime. We call it Biden migrant crime.
The showdown here at the U.S.-Mexico border is set to be a defining battle of 2024.
Artist and alumna, 3 years in the making. We also had a potential lightning rod at a charged political moment that might draw ongoing or major protests and require significant and long-term security we would need for hundreds of other events.
Providing IVF treatment. So do all of those things combined ease your concerns about access to IVF in Alabama?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm listening to the providers on the ground in Alabama, those 3 clinics you mentioned that are paused.
40 to 50,000 fatalities on the roads every year in the United States, and almost all of those are due to some form of human error.
So the hope is that AI can reduce human error.
Listening to the providers on the ground in Alabama, those 3 clinics you mentioned that are paused, they believe that this
is violation to our country. It's
publicly. In response to the NewsHour's request for an interview with University President Pamela Whitten, we were referred to this previously released short statement. Academic leaders and campus officials
paused. And so we've got a lot of work ahead of us. The good news.
Doing, for example, but economy-wide.
We've done it many times. World War II.
Lack of medicine, and this should not happen in 21st century.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick.
ADF strike was conducted towards the aid convoy.
And the reason why I say that is because for many
Biden's trip accomplishes.
Hopefully he takes some good out of this trip, and hopefully when he meets with the Border Patrol agents, they give him
that effort. She's the president and CEO of Resolve, the National Infertility Association. She joins me.
What they are doing now, trying to scare the whole world, it does risk a conflict with nuclear weapons.
Like, this is a compelling enough reason to cancel the exhibition.
A bill to enshrine IVF protection nationally. That bill's path.
I hear children laughing. I hear people on the basketball court. I smell cookouts. Anacostia Park is located along the Anacostia River.
Close to the nation's main nuclear weapons assembly plant near Amarillo.
That came out and opened fire on people randomly.
Around the country, including Indiana, she says the cancellation was a surprise.
By just violation to our country.
Trump said so. Seeing four fellas who know a thing or two about Republican politics goes away. Joan Biskupic, our colleague, said it, I think, in a very succinct way. The former president's strategy of trying to delay the 4 criminal trials.
But we have a tremendous danger on the border with the illegals coming in. If you allow these massive numbers of illegals in, you're going to have a crime wave, the likes of which has never been seen. It's now starting.
Better than anybody else. You have 100 people who look in the mirror and see a president looking back.
Has provided that drone footage. You don't see in this footage mass numbers of people getting run over by trucks or.
I mean, the difficult thing about working
With the people in the region, I'm still probably not by Monday, but I'm hopeful.
Did you know in Gaza City more than 100 civilians were killed?
We're checking that out right now. There's two competing versions of what happened.
Like a stranger in the night. I think that it's important if you're in trouble, if you're feeling paranoid, if you don't know where to learn, where to talk, where to find out more, or you don't know who to trust, do your best to trust the government. It's what I've done, and over the years, well, at least I'm still alive. America has a problem, okay? Everyone's lying in the country, everyone. As I believe I mentioned in Benito's Cat a number of years ago, which has been put up on my Podbean account for a number of times, actually, because it would keep getting corrupted, okay? The files kept getting corrupted, so I had to take them down. And finding the fresh files, the untainted files, has been difficult. Okay, but America has a problem with quite a few things, okay? The integrity of the country has been imperiled, okay? America's sense of loyalty, even at the political level, strikes me as being imperiled, okay? The loyalty of its citizens, you, I, everyone else, is imperiled. Our bravery has been imperiled, okay? Our honesty has been imperiled, all right? Our chasteness, our ability to be chaste, CHASTE, has been imperiled. Okay. Wake up, America. We have a choice this coming election. Okay. I've been studying the human face for decades and decades. One of the things you learn about the human face when you study it at the anatomical, morphological, and all of it, likenesses, all of it, expression, is you read faces really well. It's one of the things that makes some criminals and some men of the street like myself very good at staying alive, okay? You see someone walking your direction and you can see their face clearly if you have good eyes, and you get a feeling for that person almost immediately based on the expression in the eyes, the way the brow interacts with the bridge of the nose, with the eyes, with the tension underneath the lids, all of it, the expression of the mouth, whether whether the nose is flared or not, the expression in the eyes, all of it, what the wrinkles are doing in the face, all of those things play a part. And when you're a man on the street and you see someone who is fake or has an expression of, I can't believe these suckers are believing this shit, you realize there's a problem with your country. Okay. One of the big problems with Americans is you've been very comfortable for many decades. Very comfortable. We've had so many delightful restaurants in the past for a long time. The cattle industry has been vast. I remember the days back in the 90s when you could go into a grocery store and anything you wanted you could get. There'd be a foreign food aisle, there'd be all kinds of things. So you could buy anything you wanted. Those days are quickly coming to an end. The days of opulence and greed will always be with us, I suppose, in one form or another. But America, you have to, I believe, make the right choice this presidential election cycle and vote for the right candidate. And it's a very important decision to make. Personally, I believe that women are the chief problem with the United States today, just as they are in New Zealand, just as they are in Australia, just as they are in England. Okay, it's a terrible thing to say because it ostracizes me from everybody. No man who's handsome as I am will say this to you, America, because they don't want to lose their pussy. Okay. They don't want to lose their quota of pussy. I'm in a situation where I've had to be without a woman for many years because any woman I would go near would be so, she'd be made so filthy by the incessant advances of countless men that she would be a diseased woman in about a fortnight. If I picked her up, many times I've tried picking up women when I was in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. I don't know, Pennsylvania or Boston, whatever, I don't know. I can't remember all the places I picked up women. New Hampshire, a lot of pretty women up there, but when they just, the point I'm trying to make is that, my situation is different than yours, so I guess you can't express yourself, express what you know about the corruption of the American woman, the Jezebel that she has become on a mass scale. But I can, because it doesn't matter whether I'm nice to them or not. I'd never get laid anyway. All right. I tried hiring prostitutes when I was in New Zealand, and I never went through with it because they were filthy. You see. The point I'm trying to make is that, you should learn from my experience. Being marked is a lot like being a canary in a coal mine. Now, I'm not the only marked man out there. There are many, many others like me. Isn't it interesting that women in the United States are never marked? Okay, it's only American men who get marked. It's been going on for decades. Listen to my advice. I've had to go without so many meals over the past 3 years that I've lost, must be at least 75 pounds over the past 3 years. Okay. Give you an example of what I've had to go through, the consequences of my, 5 or 6 years of having been a slave, more or less, in Hollywood. I walked into a cafe today and bought a breakfast burrito that was packaged, and you give it to the staff, and they unwrap it and they stick it in an oven and heat it up for you. And I took this burrito that was nice and hot, and I took it back to my hotel room and I ate it. And I don't know what was in it. Okay. Might have been HIV medication or something. Because I felt the same way many times before in New Zealand. All right. I was there for 2.5 years in New Zealand. And now I'm beginning to experience it here, you see. When you're a tabula rasa, as I am and have been my whole life, I don't like people. I'll be honest with you. I just don't like people. In my family, the three men in my family I've depended on and looked to as role models in my life consisted of three. My father, who was gregarious with everybody, was faithful to my knowledge with his wife, my mother, but was remarkably gullible at believing the things that people would tell him about his own family, and then he would become abusive with his own family based on falsehoods, false witnessings of other people about members of his family, you see. That's what Californians are like, you see. I have another role model, my Uncle Trevor, who was nicknamed Rastus Ramfuck his whole life, because whenever he would see a woman, he wouldn't even hesitate. He ended up marrying a woman who apparently was a real bitch, and he's had a miserable life for years, and he never even hesitates to be with other women. He's got 2 daughters. One is married, the other one is disabled, and I don't talk to him much anymore. And then I've got another uncle named Graham, who kept to himself his whole life. Didn't like his adopted country so much. I called up the other day. He said, Andrew, he said, the place is going to hell. I'm just taking care of my things here, getting my things in order, but the place is going to hell. I've been following the news podcasts from the United States, the main networks, for a number of months, and I couldn't agree more with my Uncle Graham. The United States is going to hell. It takes a brave man to step in front of the principal individuals of power in a country and simply state that the ship isn't sinking. It takes a very brave man to do that, it seems. Because to everybody else in the country, the storms, the murders. I just heard today about a murder or some woman who was mutilated in a New York City subway. And it was discussed by the female anchor on ABC News with as much nonchalance as someone picking up some cotton candy at a circus. She had her feet cut off of her body in a New York City subway. All right. La-di-da. Next story. Trust me, America, any American men who are listening to this, you have to vote for Donald Trump. Right? He's a man who, through the fact that he's been so well off his whole life, he's had a chance to see the world at every echelon of society, the low, the middle, and the high. Biden, due to the fact that he's had a very privileged life and has been involved in the sequestered hallways and lobbies and such of, I suppose, expensive hotels in Washington, D.C. for decades, I get the impression is out of touch. Okay, I don't think he hears you when your home is destroyed by a tornado or a blizzard or whatever. When your home is completely overwhelmed with water. That's the impression I get. He's an old man. He can't be in touch with your situation. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't be able to put on some gumboots and trudge through waist-high water just to say hello or to see how you're doing. Or, presidents, I guess, just don't do that these days. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But, why not just take a helicopter and fly to a disaster area and just helicopter in and get I don't know, a golf cart and just drive around and see how people are doing. I mean, I lost my Social Security benefits last month. They just dropped. No explanation as to why, nothing. Ostensibly, it's because all my information, my contact information with Social Security was changed. Okay. And I can't prove my identity to them ostensibly because I can't get that information, that false information at Social Security changed, you see, despite voice recognition software and all that, you see. There's something really serious going on in the world today, and it's directly related to the United States, okay? There has been a vicious plot on the part of many nations to ruthlessly torture and kill Americans outside of the borders of the United States. All right. Not you and your children and your families, but via stolen blood, okay, which is like innumerable rivers of blood that are seeping out of the United States. You or your grandmother or your father who was a veteran in Korea or Vietnam, can you imagine the sounds of cries of help and sorrow and grief and torture, the sounds of torture of a tortured vet, American vet from Vietnam in, say, Afghanistan or Russia or North Korea or Japan, maybe, or, well, certainly, I would imagine, or even Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Philippines, maybe. Now imagine that on a scale of maybe millions of people, millions of clones of you, your baby girl, who's raped and maybe impregnated by many men from other countries. Imagine Charlize Theron regenerated as a clone maybe 5,000 times and scattered throughout the world, you see. Imagine that lunatic who was at the Academy Awards today, who was displaying himself naked, replicated and thrown into an underworld fight club sort of arena where he has to fight for his life just to stay alive. He'd probably do quite well, I imagine, but when you're in the underworld, you're going to go down at some point. And if you're American, you're certainly going to go down. When you think of that movie Gladiator with, what was his name? It was Ridley Scott film, wasn't it? Now imagine it as a parable or as an allegory of the life that someone who is important either in politics or high society of the United States or Hollywood, living a life outside of the United States as a clone and having to fight for his life every day, being tormented and humiliated and starved, in some cases incarcerated, thrown on the street perpetually, time and time and time again, unable to speak the language, unable to get a decent meal, unable to get a decent food, nothing, no drink, over and over again. Then he's just thrown off a cliff, or he's thrown into a car and he has to try to get out, and it's nothing more than a game, and he just ends up getting killed, crashing his car somewhere, or going off a cliff out of frustration, or jumping off a building, anything you can imagine. It's probably been done to Americans behind the scenes in many, many countries throughout the world. Trump has alluded to it. I imagine even Biden has too, but maybe he's given up on it, as old men generally do. The theft of American intellectual property. You have a choice this election, this presidential election in America, you have to do the right thing. I suggest, for lack of anyone better, you go for Donald Trump. There's a problem with childishness on a mass scale in the United States. It comes from comfort. Okay, Americans have known a degree of comfort that has lasted for many, many decades. Okay, during World War II, one of the, I suppose the chief reason why the Europeans hate our guts, why the English hate our guts, why so many, the Russians, all of them, the world hates our guts, is because the United States did not see warfare on its own territory. Okay. As a result, from a certain point of view, apart from organized crime and the crimes of passion, which seem to become more and more inflamed with every passing year, it's as if Americans have become like deer, prey, no natural predators, you see. And so the young children of our country grow up with their own bedroom. They have toys at a very young age. Christmas, as you know, is one of the most anticipated moments of every year in America's calendar. I never received many presents growing up. A lot of kids did. Right? Toys, they call it teddy bears, all kinds of things. When you have no fear of anything, really, the sins that humankind is known for can easily take root. Okay. How many of you have ever tried fasting for more than 2 or 3 days in a row? I would suggest anybody to try it. The Jewish people customarily fast at various points in their years, and it's very healthy because it gets rid of toxins which are stored in the fat deposits of the body, and you generally feel more comfortable, more alive, alert. You feel quicker on your feet because you have less weight on you, and such and so forth. But I don't want to be too critical of the United States because it is my country, even though I was forced out. I'd love one day to describe the events that led to my departure. Most people would never believe it. But I had, when I had the money in the bank to leave the United States, I thought about going to Nebraska or maybe Kansas or someplace like that, and I didn't, and as a result, I left. And when I was at the gate in Los Angeles, there were police there. My face was scanned along with everyone else's face, and maybe it was due to the fact that I was so beaten up from being on the streets. The ravages of homelessness do that to your face. Maybe I wasn't even spotted or didn't come in as who it was. I don't know, but the police let me get through the gate, and I boarded my flight to Auckland, New Zealand, and there you have it. But I'm hoping to put back up my files of Benito's cat. I'm dealing with a difficult woman who has the files and is unwilling to part with them, you see. But I assure you they are there, and those who downloaded the files to Benito's cat, I hope will be able to maybe put them on a CD or what have you, and give them to someone who can use them. The experiences I've gone through are very valuable. Contrary to my situation, I wouldn't agree to leave the United States as a marked man unless you're forced to. On the streets of New York City and Boston, chiefly black baristas in Starbucks and other cafes who are always, I guess, put on alert when they knew that I was walking down the street. And so every time I would go in to get a cup of coffee, it was usually poison. I remember one time when I flew in from, I believe it was Washington, D.C. to New York City, LaGuardia, I believe it was. Well, I made my way through the gate and went into the first cafe in LaGuardia Airport. The young black woman, gave me a poisoned cup of coffee, and by the time I got to the cab area, or the area to get into the metro, or subway, I had to throw up into the rubbish bin at where the airport departure is, you see, departure area. I've had tainted cigarettes. It's just, it's unbelievable. You know, to be completely innocent and have so much done to you is really something. It's really something else. I know that when I was young, I thought I had HIV. The only thing I could think of that could possibly be something that could have led to being marked. There was nothing. I was nice to all the women I've been with. Maybe if I was rougher with them, this never would have happened. But here I am in various places, and as I said, I've been a tabula rasa my whole life. I don't have any friends. You see, when you are a tabula rasa, like a carpenter, sequestered in his workshop, and you don't have anything to do with it, you just mill out a piece of furniture or a stool or a desk or whatever for people, and that's all you do with your life. To suddenly find yourself thrust into a situation where so many people all over the world know who you are because of your recordings, and still find it within their hearts to laugh at you in the street, or some look at you with respect, I suppose. Other marked men who've taken the trip to Horsham, I suppose, maybe, I don't know, just to see if they can spot Andrew Burward-Hoy on the street. But a lot looks at derision. I see a lot of Italians recently, particularly Italian women on the streets of Horsham, who look at me with a great deal of shame in their eyes. And when Jesus said to his disciples, "Take no thought for what ye shall eat and what ye shall drink," that takes on new meaning when you travel from place to place and you just can't trust anything you put in your mouth anymore. If America hopes to bind itself, to weave itself together amidst the constant, incessant waves of violence and mayhem wrought by countless immigrants flooding in from the South, countless immigrants who've been given decent jobs instead of white Americans, both male and female, throughout the country, who do nothing more than take advantage of their positions to sow mistruths, cause misfortune to whoever they can who's white. Blacks who've betrayed the United States ever since they saw the planes hit the World Trade Center, who said to themselves, that's me, you know. Look how smart the Arabs are. Look what they did to the United States. The United States never saw it coming. Look at the beards of countless black people all across the country. What do you think that is? Do you think that's just a fashionability? They're dumb. They're announcing their servitude to a new God, an Arab God, you see. Examine the sales records of countless blacks throughout the United States. Have they ever bought the Quran? Of course they have. Sometimes they, I imagine, just pass it around in the family and try to do it away from a computer, away from a cell phone. The chief instruments of America's ability to access information about the populace via the cameras and what have you. You know, small camera on your laptop, what have you. I would wager more. You know, how many times has a black family had a Quran hidden away in its back room somewhere that they treat like a religious ceremony, being able to get together and turn the pages and read the chapters of the Quran on slavery, the bondage of women, the binding of your enemies, the torture and torment of your enemies. They're not the only ones. I'm referring, of course, to the blacks. Got countless Arabs. I would be surprised if millions of Latinos and Europeans as well, and Mexicans and Guatemalans and Brazilians have all decided to embrace, well, a different God than the God that was commonly worshipped in the United States for most of its duration. Regardless of whether you consider yourself a Puritan or someone who hates Puritanism, or someone who's a Lutheran or Baptist or someone who's Anglican or whatever, the disavowal of God, the disavowal of his existence, is well noted on this earth as it is in heaven, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I've been a Buddhist for most of my life, and I've had to take some things in Buddhism with a grain of salt. Because quite frankly, some of the things espoused in the Buddhist faith strike me as being perhaps either vestiges of a prior time or merely elaborations to nothing more than titillate women or try to corral them to your side, so to speak, because women are very superstitious, and that's true for women all over the world. It's amazing the divinity of women. They are almost always the same everywhere you go in the world. It's as if there's something in their genetic makeup that makes them almost always the same everywhere in the world. White women the same way. And to reiterate just a fraction of the things that I spoke about in Benito's Cat, files to which I hope to one day get up again sometime soon. When you have a multicultural society and they're coming in by the boatload, by the thousands, hundreds of thousands every day, it puts a weight on your country that it cannot maintain. Okay. It puts a weight on your country when all the immigrants, the quote-unquote first-generation Americans from other countries, have systematically betrayed their country and are doing nothing more than attempting to use their position in society with their new cars, American-bought cars, which are nothing more than a symbol of an immigrant's essence inside a white-made hole, so to speak. And blacks have been doing this for years as well. When they're taking advantage of their positions of power, increasingly, even in the media, to manipulate, distort, triumph, conquer, rape, pillage, steal, poison, the works. Wake up, America. Please wake up. You really... What happened to me, don't think it won't happen to you. I'm still sequestered in my hotel room. I don't leave my hotel room. Why would I? It's obvious Horsham doesn't want me here, is the impression I get. I walked into a bakery the other day just to buy a loaf of bread. And the old lady, white woman, English, simply said, I'll bet he's small, referring to myself. She didn't even care if I overheard her or would get on the phone with my family or anything like that and say that some rude English woman openly talked to her associate, also a woman, that she thinks the reason why I'm marked is because I'm small in the pants. You see? Constant guesswork. Here and there, bigger, 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 bigger. Yap, 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 yap. It's got to be because of this. It's got to be something because no innocent man would ever be marked. It's insane. Of course not. I mean, after all, the mafia is like Robin Hood, aren't they? Or they're like the Scarlet Pimpernel. They never are wrong. They're always after someone who's a sinner. After all, that's what it says in the movies, right? Countless idiotic movies from Hollywood and elsewhere. Marked men are often innocent, is the impression I get. And they have a very strong connection to people like Jesus Christ. The apostles, if they were indeed killed, no one knows, But I'll tell you, when you have been marked and you are set to wandering, as I have been for years now, and people know you're going to a city or town before you even get there, the expectation and all that, you could call it the Christ effect. And in my case, it's been amplified by the fact that I've made these many recordings on my website, which none have taken off just because of the sheer novelty of hearing what a marked man, someone who was marked by Cosa Nostra, what indeed does he have to say, if anything? He knows he's guilty. He knows he's done something wrong. What indeed could he possibly have to say? We'll just listen and see what he has to say. Oh, obviously he's nuts. He's talking about genetic engineering. He's talking about clones that are as old as we are. What hogwash, what nonsense. Uniquely from women who don't want to take the leap of faith, the leap of understanding that it's possible to clone someone and through the use of chemicals or manipulation of genes. I don't know how it's done. You can walk down the street if you spend enough time in a foreign country and literally see yourself walking the other direction. Same expression in the eyes. Maybe a look of acknowledgement in the eyes of the person you see, who's you. Some hint of understanding that there's intelligence there, and there go memories. Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian mafia, can't kill me. They can't get their hands on me. And they cover this up everywhere I go by posturing, by spreading propaganda everywhere I go. That you have to do this to antagonize him. You have to do this. You have to do a certain number of things, almost like a rule book, like a recipe book, in order to get him to do a unique thing so that he can be killed, you see. And it usually involves antagonizing me, in particular, in my case. So I get violent, tampered with food, snide remarks in the street, everywhere I go. It's staggering. I've been putting up with it for 3 years since I've been outside of the United States. It's easy to get lost in the United States because it's so big, and often people just don't recognize you even if you were on the street. They say, oh, well, it's just obvious it's someone who looks like him. And usually that's due to the fact that most people you see on the street at all hours of the day and night are immigrants and blacks, you see, and other dark-skinned people who have set in roots in the United States. You see, when you're a foreign, think about it. If you're a black man, all white people almost always look the same. And if you're a white man, you look at black people, oftentimes they look the same to white people too, you see. So given the expansiveness of the United States and the fact that, the U.S. is generally a very busy country, maybe less and less so as people neglect their jobs and decide to try to sabotage the U.S. government by not paying their taxes or not doing this, not doing that. Bouder, as they call it in French, B-O-U-D-E-R, which means to sulk, as all spoiled children do. Apart from those things you mentioned, generally there are a lot of busy people still in the United States, and they just don't give a shit if you're walking down the street. They may recognize you. That looks a little bit like Andrew or Andrew Burward or whatever, because of the popularization of this idiotic hit that will just never eventuate. as has been going on since I was, as I said, about 26 years old. Seinfeld, morning shows, all of it, and this, and that, and you're in danger. Never ending, never ending. See? Children like to play games, and women in the United States who are also children really like to play games. Just get them in a hotel room alone with a stash of heroin or cocaine and toys of some variety, and maybe a whip or a mask of some kind, if you like, something to put in their mouth that you can tie behind their neck. Women in the United States love games. They love them even more so than the children who are in the United States, who are there by the millions. As I mentioned in Benito's cat, Verhoeven's The Running Man is a very good example of what I have gone through for years, both in the United States when I was set to wandering, due to my family's desires to get rid of something they saw as a blemish in their family history, me. I was set to wandering. You see, it's unfair. It's just not fair. I don't hate them for it. Although I have gotten angry with them, they still don't talk to me. But when you have someone who, when they can't figure you out, you see, your family, they get treated like shit because they go to grocery stores just like anybody else does, just as I do. They go to cafes, they go to restaurants, they go everywhere. And when their food is spat into, or when their food is tampered with, and when they get cattle called in the streets, my sisters and my family, see, my uncle, I guess feels threatened, or when he gets framed for something, his business has more or less been run into the ground. I don't know the story behind that. I've tried to give him some good advice over the years. He just doesn't take it, I suppose. Another uncle, doesn't even leave his home, I guess. They just want to get rid of the embarrassment, you see. So I was set to wandering many years ago, and you learn things when you travel around from place to place. And one of the things I've learned over the years is Cosa Nostra can't kill me unless I get violent. And it took a long time to realize that. I tried many opportunities to avoid conflict with people, but when they're right in your face and they continually poison you time and time again everywhere you go, even I suppose paying regular retail cafes, bistros, restaurants, and stuff, cheap, all cheap, of course, because I don't have a lot of money, paying retailers to either throw you out or take your size pants off the rungs of their clothing store, so you can never buy a decent pair of trousers, or paying hotel staff to sneak into your hotel room when you're not there and break your zipper, as was the case in my situation here in Horsham, where I had to walk around for about 2 weeks with a pair of filthy black jeans that had a broken zipper. My goddamn underwear showing. When you get all your money from heroin, prostitution, selling clones of beautiful women, which many men, even very wealthy men, will pay millions of dollars for. Who wouldn't want a clone of a 15-year-old clone of Brooke Shields, or let's say a 12-year-old clone of Charlize Theron, or any of the other innumerable beautiful women who are nothing more than whores, to my reckoning, in Hollywood. That's precisely how they're treated around the world when they get cloned everywhere. With one drop of blood, you can probably clone someone 1,000 times, I would reckon. Maybe wrong about that, but that's what I reckon. I reckon you can probably clone a woman 1,000 times with a drop of blood. You see. All you have to do is come up behind. Well, Charlize Theron's an obvious example. I'm getting a little laboring the point with that one. But who else is there? I don't look them up, so I don't know. Who was the pretty girl that was in Transformers? She probably wouldn't be touched because she's Latino. But what are some other beautiful white women out there? Let's say, here's a good one. Jodie Foster. How about that? She's a beautiful woman. Dynamite looking woman. Always has been. Probably always will be until the day she dies. Beautiful woman. I have no doubt she's been cloned at least 1,000, maybe 10,000 times all over the world. If you have Russia, or the hierarchy of Russia, or maybe different countries throughout Europe, maybe even Macron, Manuel Macron, maybe he's even forked out 2 million just to get himself a 12-year-old Jodie Foster. That he just keeps on his mansion, his country mansion. Keeps her locked away. And talks to her, finds out everything he can about the United States, because he's always wanted to go to the United States. And he thinks it's such a lovely country, he'd like to know more about it. And oh, by the way, here's something for your tea, or here's something in your food, and we'll have a great time. And never ends, I imagine. Though she maybe gets a disease or something, and then he just would have to get rid of her somehow. And imagine that times 10 million, or maybe a billion times, with different women who've been who are clones, you see, and they're men who are run to the street, who are created for no other purpose than to be prey all over the world. Pakistan, Uzbekistan, name any country in the world, I'll bet there's been an American clone there at some point in the past. The world is not your friend, America. They hate you. They hate you with a loathing and a viciousness that is beyond compare. There's probably no historical precedent for it, you see. They hate you. They don't want to have anything to do with you. They hate your democracy. They don't like the way you look. All they want to do is cut your men to pieces, flush them down a toilet, rape your women, and try to assimilate the white people. And that's precisely what has been going on in the United States for a very long time indeed. The Emancipation Proclamation, a joke. The southern states of the United States during the Civil War, what a tragedy. I have no doubt that the southern states did their best to explain to the northern states, who did not have very strong populations of blacks and therefore did not understand the black man or the black woman to the same extent that the southern states did. I have no doubt that the representatives of the southern states did their best to explain why it would not work. Trying to emancipate the slaves and allow them to breed all over the place, have them crossbreed with white women chiefly, and why that scenario would just never work. I have no doubt many famous people in the South did their best, many infamous now, and many of whom have had their statues pulled down, as we all know, and as well as the banning of the flag, the Confederate flag. I have no doubt the South did their best to avoid warfare. They did their best to explain to the North, the callow, naive North, why it was a bad idea to emancipate the slaves and allow them to stay in your country. In ancient Egypt, as is expressed in Genesis, the wandering Jewish people, the tribe of Israel, were given an opportunity to have shelter in the Egyptian empire. And they thrived alongside the Egyptian people for many, many, many years, maybe 300 or 400 years, maybe much longer than that. At a given point, the Egyptian establishment was so incensed, so upset with the tremendous vigor and strength of the Jewish populations who were living alongside the Egyptians for a long period of time that they decided to enslave them all. In the U.S., it's a little bit different. The U.S. started with black slavery, emancipated the slaves. Their savior, the black savior, Abraham Lincoln, was shot before he could advance his next political agenda. Nobody knows what it might have been. Even his wife, I'm sure, doesn't know, because she was a schizophrenic, ostensibly, and that might be complete nonsense. But he was shot. No one knows what happened, so people just had to keep going with it. I believe that Emancipation of the Proclamation would only work. The emancipation of the black people can only work if they are given the freedom to go back to Mother Africa go back to father, whatever they call it. Go back to Africa. It is the only way. Instead, they're everywhere. You see, blacks are not bound by the same laws of morality, the same laws of chastity, the same laws of marriage, everything else, child rearing, countless behaviors. They're not raised the same way that the white people are. And due to the fact that many of the programs that have been written and produced and televised on the countless television programs in the United States, as well as many movies, are written or have been influenced by liberal America, ergo white, naive men, who literally have been writing lines, dialogue, to be uttered by black people, both black men and women and children. And if you understand Black America, as I had the opportunity to do so when I was in Virginia, North Carolina, to a certain extent Los Angeles, and some due to some of the people that I met there, where else? The streets of Boston, halfway houses, homeless shelters, jails, prisons, all over the place in the East Coast. You get to know the black people, and you do perceive that they have developed a subculture that is quite different than the white established culture of white America. They really are two different species at this unique point in time, culturally, as far as political outlook, as far as ambitions, as far as their expressions of what is true and right in a people in a given society. You see, torture, beheadings, castrations, dismemberment, no problem for Black America. Okay, it is a problem for the white Americans. You see, we were supposed to be bound by a covenant, a right of covenants, the Geneva Convention, the rights of man, les droits de l'homme, as it was called in France. And before that, the Magna Carta, which led to the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights. When you have an emancipated population who don't care about your history, don't care about the things that you develop as a society, as miraculous as some of these things are, nanotechnology, bionics, huge skyscrapers, you name it. They just want to pull it down. And just to reiterate, when the black population of the United States saw those two buildings come down, the World Trade Center buildings, it's probably one of the great embarrassments of the intelligence community that they heard millions screaming with laughter and joy, dancing, enjoying themselves in black areas of the United States and throughout the world. Enter the Italian immigrant. Italians have been washing ashore on the United States for a long, long time. Just as I said in Benito's Cat, the population of at least Sicilians in the United States at about 1943, I believe, was 2 million just prior to the invasion of Sicily, which at the time in history was the biggest amphibious invasion in human history. Subservient only, I suppose, to what would soon have been D-Day. Okay. Taking that as read, can anyone use their imagination to such an extent, after having seen so many movies of blown up Normandy and so many destroyed buildings of Normandy and throughout France and elsewhere, as movies about Germany, and yet Italy seems to go amiss, doesn't it? The bombardments of Napoli, the conquest of Sicily, the death of Patton, rather a horrible death, was it done? It seems so much like a coincidence, the death of Patton, doesn't it? And yet, if you know Sicilians as I do, I tell you, they're very clever. Beheading? That sounds about right. You see, Patton. Patton was one of the best things to ever happen to World War II. I mean, Eisenhower was the top, and Patton was remarkable. He knew his history. He knew his military history thoroughly. And when he and Montgomery were racing at different areas of Sicily to get to Salerno so they could stop the Germans from escaping to the mainland of Italy, it ended up becoming a failure because no one could understand how the Germans got across the little strait there into Italy and escaped the grasp of Montgomery and General Montgomery and Patton. One of the great mysteries. They were just apparently phenomenal. They organized everything, the Germans, and I guess with the loyal Italians got off of Sicily and escaped. But the carnage that must have been left, no doubt, not only by tanks and military troops on the ground, but also by aerial bombardments, artillery bombardments, as well as the teams of individuals who were probably shot by rifle, mortar, and such, flamethrower. I don't know. You'd have to investigate whether or not the flamethrower was ever used in Sicily, but I may not have developed that point in time. But can you imagine? And you have 2 million Sicilians in your country in 1943 already. Now, the truth of the relation that the Sicilian people have with Mussolini is, I suspect, has been covered up. One of the great revelations to me was in 2019 when I was living in a rather nice but very, very dark apartment in Wellington, New Zealand. I had a subscription to Le Monde, which I had to pay through the nose for. I think they triple charged me, quite frankly, or at least double charged me for the subscription. That's how much they don't like Americans reading their French language news articles. There was a Sicilian author, a very well-respected man. He was sort of a titan in Sicilian literature, who died, and they were publishing in the French newspaper a posthumous laudatory article that literally had in its title the fact that he wanted it to be known, this Sicilian author, when he died, that the Italians never fell out of love with Mussolini. You see? Now, if you read The Honored Society by Norman Lewis, the picture that was painted for Norman, poor old Norman, vis-a-vis the relation that Mussolini ostensibly had with the Sicilian people, it paints a different picture. It doesn't ring true to my mind. They might have actually been events that transpired, but given the way the Sicilians manipulate the truth of events, the way they manipulate the truth, I have a feeling. Well, no doubt, I do know that there were Sicilian nationals who did assist the Allies in the invasion of Sicily, and cunning little devils, I would say. But the long and short of it is that Italians have been washing ashore on the United States for many, many years. When everyone saw the Rocky films, the first Rocky, all of it, it was done in such a way that it could be interpreted in 2 different ways. To white America, I suppose to black America, it looked like an American man who was asserting himself, who was down on his luck, and who, through sheer force of will and using his freedoms, his God-given freedoms as an American citizen, was lancing himself, throwing himself up the stairs in leaps and bounds, and throwing his arms up in his gray jumpsuit and celebrating the fact that he triumphed at getting to the top of the staircase. Has anyone ever heard of the March on Rome, Mussolini's March on Rome, by any chance? If you read an encyclopedia, as I did when I was in Los Alamos Detention Center in 2010, I believe it was, I had an opportunity to read about the march. I just stumbled on it. I just picked M out of the list of encyclopedias one day and was browsing through it. Stumbled on the March on Rome by Mussolini. To America, it looks great. It's an American man celebrating the fact that Americans love to jump up into the sky and into the stratosphere, but to a Sicilian or to Italians, and increasingly, as would be the case, many blacks, it was Rocky more or less recreating the final moments of the March on Rome up the Capitoline Hill, to literally, by sheer force of numbers, people behind Mussolini, following and marching behind him, demanding the keys to the kingdom. which is precisely what happened with much of Rome. Mussolini took power, if I'm not mistaken, without a shot being fired, because he had, I suppose, tens of thousands of people walking by him. He was a school teacher, Mussolini. So, when you have worked in Hollywood and you have really enjoyed as a young person, young man as I was, always impoverished, having to concern himself with, I suppose, Marmite and bread and butter sandwiches and toast with, what do you call it, mincemeat with usually Moroccan seasoning or something like that, which was a mainstay in my family for breakfast. Or maybe just even a traditional English breakfast. That would have to sustain you the entire day until you had dinner, which would usually be, in my case, a barbecue chicken with corn and coleslaw, and that would be about it. It was pretty much standard in my family. Occasionally we'd get a baked chicken, which was cheap, and we could cook it and have a share for ourselves, and we'd just get a few slices of meat with gravy and rice and, broccoli. So we had certain mainstays. We would sometimes have spaghetti on things, but we were very modest. We didn't have a lot of money, so we just made do with what we had. So we were all relatively thin. And I used to settle down in front of the television set in our lovely, spacious Spanish-style house, which had a free computer connection, not computer, what do you call it? Cable connection, which was an absolute mystery to all of us. We just never could understand why we had a free cable connection when we moved into this house. We didn't have to set up a cable connection. We had a free cable connection all the time we were there. And I used to watch the television all the time. I watched so many movies, it was unbelievable. And what you notice is when you do acquire an understanding, quite an assembling of different movies in the United States, you notice a pattern. And that is Italians are masters at propaganda. Way, way back, even with the Rat Pack after World War II and all that, they were brilliant at conditioning women to find them more attractive than other men from other races, and usually at the expense of the white race. And they did it under the rubric of advertising themselves as diehard Americans first and Italians second. Except all the women who flocked to their side, the Italians, understood once they got under their house under the roof, that no, they're Italians and they're going to get the Mickey on white America. And so many white women, all kinds of women from the United States, kept their mouths shut. So I'm like a broken record, going over and over and over again. As many people have tried, I suppose, for decades. Nixon might have been one of them. I know Trump is. Maybe Biden is in his younger years was as well. Maybe even Obama. Many. Maybe even Carter. Ford. They all tried. In some respects, maybe they decided maybe it wasn't such a great idea to keep the American people in the dark since World War II, even before then, maybe. So, let's look at the mathematics of the situation. I'm not great with mathematics. Everybody knows it. My family certainly knows it. But let's look at basic mathematics. Democracy depends on an informed populace. Okay. When there's an election, the political candidates, whether they're senators or House of Representatives or mayors or governors or city council members or president, tell you why you should vote for them. Okay, they explain to you, this is what we think should happen, or this is what I think should happen, and they state their policies and their justifications for this, that, and the other. If they want to ban abortion, they explain to you why it's necessary at this unique point in time in American history to ban abortion. The overturning of Roe v. Wade has occurred. I think it's a good idea, given the circumstances. Okay. If you don't have women aborting their fetuses left, right, and center, killing fetuses, children, little unborn children all over the country is a way to dissimulate, cover, to obfuscate their philanderings, their infidelities with their boyfriends and their husbands. What are you going to do? But let's return to the equation of mathematics, okay? You have diminished, largely demoralized, scared, humiliated white establishment in the United States that is diminishing day by day. You have enormous numbers of blacks, Hispanics, Italians, Arabs, all kinds of Armenians, all kinds of people. All right, people from every, I would imagine, every nation in Africa as well have come to the United States. All right. Does anybody know what their populations are? I'll bet they outnumber you, white American. Okay. If you are a fascist or a communist, a monarchist, the meaning of life is to survive. That is the meaning of life, to survive. How do you survive? Well, if you're naked in the woods, okay, you need shelter. If you're hungry, you either have to find a plant or a berry or a fruit tree or something, or another human being even, or a deer, or a wild pig, a boar if you like, or something, and kill it and eat it because you have no choice. If you don't, you'll die. Okay. The most important rule in life is survival. Okay. Now, as I've told you many times, I'm a Buddhist, okay, and I have also said that I'm more or less a renegade Buddhist because if I went to a Sangha, which is the sort of the divine community of Buddhists, I would be run out of town because the Sicilians, who are, in my unique case, not everyone's case, but in my unique case, are the unique predators in my life, would hunt me down. They'd shave off their hair, dress up like Tibetan monks, become ordained monks, and they'd do their best to poison my food and take me up the ass endlessly until I leave the Sangha. Okay? I'm not joking. Mischievousness. Survival. That's the most important thing in life. Okay? Now, in my unique cause, having been all over the United States, I see a largely somnolent white population. They're scared. They are, by and large, dutiful to their country. They're terrified of audits. They're terrified of tax increases. They're terrified of not being able to have decent food on their plate. They're terrified of this. They're terrified of that. They're terrified. Okay? And they're being decimated, from my point of view, having been at the lower class. I've been on the streets. I've been sleeping on concrete in some places. And I've also been in hotel rooms. I've been in jails. I've been in prisons. I've been in many hospitals. Okay, if you like, you can put me there again. I don't care. At least I get a free meal. Spat into these days, generally everywhere you go in the world. But at least it's a meal. You know, they force you to take Medicaid. Great. You know, who cares? Just fall asleep again. You know. So if you want to destroy democracy, you do that. You corrupt every citizen in that country. So that you can more or less have them eating out of your hand, get them addicted to drugs so that they need constant money to pay for their drug habit. You poison their food so they can't copulate, can't produce children that aren't diseased or two-headed or whatever you like. You know, you debase them, demoralize them, humiliate them by taking their blood cells and genetically engineering their blood cells outside of the country or even in the country. You take someone who's speaking up like me, hypothetically, okay, and you decide to GM, genetically modify that person, turn him into an enormous sea creature that comes out of the ocean and is so upset with his situation that he plagues a city and maybe knocks a few buildings down. And hideous to behold, you know. One possibility, you know. It's possible these days. Do you think the Japanese and their Godzilla nonsense, their, what is it, Rangers, what is it, they're 700, what is it, 1,500 foot tall superheroes trying to battle these creatures of the stratosphere. Do you think that was all bullshit? They were laughing at the ridiculousness of life. People who were hit twice by a nuclear bomb, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, millions died. They were dropped leaflets over their country, over the cities. Hiroshima, which was an industrial center, was responsible for developing many of the weapons involved with the warfare against the Allies, in the United States in particular, as I suppose Nagasaki was as well. They had to be taken out if the U.S. military establishment, in conjunction with the people of the United States and the political establishment as well, if the U.S. was going to save the lives of so many American men who were dying by the scores, if they were going to prevent the land invasion of Japan, that would have cost potentially millions of American GIs' lives, stockpiles of American, healthy American blood, healthy stocks of American men dying by the scores. If they were going to prevent that, they had to end the war. They had to drop the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Germany had already capitulated. They signed a surrender agreement, right? Could have happened to them. Might have, maybe should have. Right? Sodom and Gomorrah, pillars of fire. Here we 1940, what was it, 1944, 45 when they dropped Hiroshima and Nagasaki? You'd have to look up the exact dates, perhaps they're obscured by now. Americans dropped by bomber leaflets on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, telling them what was going to happen. I imagine they were probably written in Japanese too. Maybe they misspelled a single Japanese character, and so the Japanese assumed that they were full of shit. They didn't have this weapon. It was nothing more than an elaborate joke to get scores of Japanese, honorable citizens, all I'm sure, to leave their countries amidst the resounding laughter of the American military and political establishment and the people as well. Just elaborate jokes, so therefore stay put and just ignore it. I imagine is what the Imperial Japanese said to them, or maybe ordered them to stay put. And they all went up in smoke. The truth of the bomb was a secret, was a top secret for years. It was strict secrecy. Since that time, the nuclear bomb technology has spread. The hydrogen bomb, the technology has spread all over the world. Right? People of the world have no choice if they want to destroy the United States. They have no choice but to sacrifice themselves on a mass scale and get into the country and cause as much damage as they can. If they get arrested, which they certainly will, take advantage of the fact that Americans don't have the right anymore to put down criminals and then make a mess of their jails or their prisons or their hospitals. Self-sacrifice is what the immigrant populations of the world have accepted, and they're doing that in the country right now. Okay? Americans don't want to do that. The white populations who are terrified don't want to do that. They just want to have their food, and they want to have the right to go to their job without worrying about where their wife is while they're looking at their computer screen. Okay. Self-sacrifice. In this new war that the U.S. is involved with right now, it's taking place right on our own soil this time. There's no capital punishment in the country. Okay, or someone who believes in Rome, ancient Rome, dynasticism, and the deification of a ruler like the Egyptians and also the Romans, you see, as a way to intimidate, to beguile, and set your people, scores, hundreds of millions of people into a delusion that you are a god, and therefore they wouldn't even think of approaching you or killing you, so your family, because it would be an offense to the divine order of the cosmos, you see. It's a tactic, the deification of a leader, you see. Even the Tibetans have supposedly a deified holy leader who runs their Tibetan government in exile. From a certain point of view, it looks bloody ludicrous. Of course, he has, time and time again, the Dalai Lama said that he's nothing more than a simple monk, despite the insistences of his entourage, who insists that he's Shenrezig, who is the great god who oversees everything, I suppose, as a synonym for a god himself, Yahweh, or Zeus, or Saturn. I bet if you pricked the Dalai Lama in the bum with a needle, you'd have enough blood cells on that needle to clone him maybe 100 times. Maybe you'd find out for yourself. And then I suppose at that point he'd be a 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, you know. What's the best way for a fascist, a communist, a monarchist, whatever? It doesn't matter what the ideology is. Dynasticism. What's the best way to undermine democracy? Corruption, drugs, prostitution, sexual practices that are deviant, lead to disease and corruption and further decay. And once you've done that, then just simply find a political candidate somewhere who wants to give you everything you want. More of the same, more drugs, more senseless movies, more ridiculous rubbish on the television that has largely no meaning apart from just making you laugh at everything and everything, so you don't see what the hell's going on. You see? And what is going on? Well, in my opinion, having traveled all over the world for quite a number of years, and I had these ideas in my head even while I was in the United States as a young boy, reading constantly historical malarkey, historical fiction, all kinds of things. So history books, biographies, some science books, philosophy, religion, all of it. The world is about conquest, and it's about survival. Okay. The meaning of life. So once more, broken record. You have 2 feet. You have a left foot, you have a right foot. Okay. How do you walk down the street? If you're a little toddler, who's beginning to walk for the first time, you're conscious of the fact that you have a left foot and right foot. You've got a brain that can give orders to your left foot or your right foot. You begin to walk and make your first steps as a child. Okay. You consciously put your right foot forward, then your left foot, and then you have to think about your right foot and place your right foot down, and then the left foot follows. Okay. What happens if the left foot decides it doesn't want to be the left foot anymore and decides it wants to be the right foot? And then maybe the right foot, because it's had its position usurped, because the left foot wants to be the right foot, so now it has to be the left foot. You're going to tumble, you're going to fall. The Democrats have, I suppose, woken too late to the hypocrisy of their situation. You can't advocate for this, that, and the other of leftist politics and execute right-wing ideologies. You lose your mind. The country will lose its mind. They'll never figure out whether you're on the right or the left. The right wing is not hypocritical. They keep their mouths shut, okay, because their ideologies, their very sound opinions on life, love, family, protection, militarism, all of it, are not popular with the idiots with dreadlocks and the camouflage trousers and the tie-dye shirts and the quaaludes hanging out of the mouth and the peace signs, okay? Biden would be a good choice for president, but I think he's going to lose his mind, quite frankly. I don't understand how a man could be so encompassing as to assimilate the right and at the same time pontificate left-wing ideologies. The people will be so confused, they'll never know what the hell's going on. You would have to deify Biden to give him the authority to be so comprehensive, so magnificent, so grandiose, that he can assimilate both the right and the left up his anus, I suppose, and be this bright God, this Sun King for the American people. I don't think that's a good buy myself. I think the country will lose its mind under the radiance of such a, 89-year-old? What is he going to be, 90 years old soon? How old is he? Does anybody really know? Even with gene therapy injections and all that, which ostensibly can roll back the clock to a certain extent. What if he gets the idea, if he decides to assimilate those right and left ideologies and sort of continue to pass legislation to ennoble the executive branch? He decides he wants to run again, for a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th term. People who stand for nothing will fall for anything. Okay. The right wing has kept its mouth shut, terse. They've kept their mouths closed for years. They've seen the shit that's gone on. I mean, I hate to mention Watergate. Everyone hates Watergate. Everyone hates Nixon, but he's looking like, well, maybe he was a bit of a simpleton, but he seems like we're pretty damn smart to me. I mean, no one knows what the hell Watergate was about. So I get the impression, under certain circumstances, you can understand why someone, a political faction or political establishment of the U.S. might indeed need to break in somewhere to find out what the hell's going on, because something's not adding up. But the mere pettiness of the break-in as being a violation of law, a criminal act, overwhelmed perhaps the wisdom, I don't know, or no one knows what the hell Watergate was about. The Watergate Hotel was there. When I was in Washington, D.C., I passed it from time to time. I remember the cab that took me out of D.C., I think the last time I was in Washington, D.C., passed in front of the Watergate Hotel. It was an immigrant driver. Okay. The point I'm trying to make is that the time for the right has come. They've sat back and they waited for, I suppose, decades. Waited for the country to wake up. Waited and waited and waited. What are you going to do? Do you want a schizophrenic president? That seems maybe a bit radical sad. Do you want a schizophrenic or someone who has the potential to lose his mind? You're sitting on top of a vast nuclear arsenal, a vast military infrastructure, and vast, come on. I think it's a bad idea myself. That's the impression I'm making. I mean, I hate to wax political. I'm not really a political animal. I've never have been a political animal. My affairs concern themselves with survival, and that is it. But in my opinion, I think I would rather have a single-pointed president, someone who's I'd rather have someone whose gladiolus is sharpened and well hewn with a single point rather than a double-pointed gladiolus, to make that kind of comparison. The right, I believe, are more focused. They're stronger on their feet. They can feel their right foot. They can feel their left foot. They know they have a right foot. They know they have a left foot. I get the impression, depending on the political speech and the legislation, the left doesn't know whether they have two right feet or two left feet. I think it's a bad buy myself. What kind of world do we want is the upshot of this particular Podbean episode. Podbean. It's a ridiculous name for a place where people, anybody can voice their opinion. Podbean. What does that mean? Pod. In Hollywood, a pod is what? It's something you grow an insect in that breaks out of a placenta and haunts the universe, right? Or tries to break out and destroy buildings and kill people and stuff like that. Podbean and a bean. That implies flatulence, doesn't it? Podbean. Regardless, what kind of world do you want? Genetics is going crazy all over the world. No one talks about it. It's the biggest, it's the hottest, it's the biggest, most magnificent, hugest, most terrifying pink elephant that is 5,000 feet tall and is breaking apart the world. Clones, women is probably what started it. I mean, I can't, or Hitler. It was discovered back in the 20s, cloning. All right. It was being expressed in World War II. Maybe even there were hints of it in World War I. It was covered up. Okay, I saw a film made in Russia, in Australia, on their foreign movies channel, that was translated, so I was able to catch some of it, that it directly tried to imply that Hitler was cloning himself in World War I. Sorry, II. If it was World War I, that'd be rather scary, wouldn't it? Half the population of Germany would have been on his side by the time of the war. By the time of the fall of the Weimar Republic, all that. But cloning was covered up, okay, at least in the U.S. I suppose the left thought that it would be too scary, too terrifying to average citizens of the United States to go about their affairs, to take their children to school every day, preschool. The worries of wondering whether or not little Italian immigrant kids in preschool with their children would lift their children's DNA and send them off to medical experiments, or somehow traffic their blood cells out of the country was just too terrifying for the average American citizen to contemplate. So therefore, put them all to sleep. If necessary, truck in enormous numbers of numbing, bovine-inducing European medications, and just keep them all to sleep. We'll just keep trucking along. Europe will be on top. It's no big deal. Europe will take care of it. We'll figure out. Europe's a god. They're like gods. Just let them govern, and we'll just trust and just hope that everything turns out right. Europe strikes me as being an absolute nuthouse, really, quite frankly. They've been living with the realities of genetics ostensibly for, well, about a century now. That place strikes me as being a lunatic asylum. Okay? Insane. All they do is, the leader of the spokesman of the UN is a dead ringer for Julius Caesar, for Christ's sake. Zelensky looks like Napoleon. It's an insane asylum. For all I know, they manufacture, 700-foot tall lizard people with Trump's brains and just laugh at them and shoot them all fucking day long, over and over again. As nothing more than an after-supper amusement. It's an insane asylum. Europeans, bye-bye, they're gone. They're nuts. They're crazy. They're lunatics. Okay. They take a man up the ass 4 years in a row, day and night, and just laugh about it, man. Drink, enjoy yourself. Some poor victim, some poor scumbag on the street, they just kidnap him, literally tie him down and fuck him up the ass for 4 years or 5 years, maybe 10 years, day and night, until he drops dead of a heart attack from lack of sleep. Life is meaningless, you see. La vie, ça n'a pas d'importance. C'est pas très important. Ce qui est important dans la vie, c'est de s'amuser, faire des choses, bon, boire, manger. That's all they care about. They don't care about the importance of life. They don't care about democracy. They probably don't even care about democracy or dictatorship. They just don't care. They think life is about food and conquest, and they just don't care. Oh, great, we'll have democracy for the next 200 years. Who cares? Nobody cares. The gods don't care. God doesn't exist. We'll just have democracy. We'll just say we have democracy, and we'll just have a monarchy instead. We'll just tell everybody that we just believe something else. They become just a bunch of lunatic actors who are nothing more than crackpots. Okay, but America was kept asleep. They continued their studies. They continued their jobs, and they were being lampooned outside of the country for decades. Right? Now we're in a situation where the mindlessness of violence and torturings and killings and insanities of such reckless victimization of clones, no rights whatsoever accorded to people, no rights whatsoever accorded to clones who are nothing more than people, sentient beings. Even if they have 20% fox DNA or wolf DNA, or a fox and let's say eagle DNA, or have been maybe they're only 50% human. They're still a sentient being. They still feel. If you cut their hands off, they feel it. They cry. They wail in agony. They're sentient. Okay, they're not meaningless. Not meaningless. All right. So now we're in a situation where warfare is upon us. Okay, the U.S. I guess has decided to do something about this mess. The Biden administration, via the entremise of Kamala Harris, the vice president, they said we're isolationists now. We're just not going to have anything more to do with you. We don't like you. We're going to play with ourselves now. I think the U.S. should set up a fucking perimeter on the United States, quite frankly. Either with ocean buoys or something. Do something to establish a moat of sorts around the entire country, if you want to go that route of isolationism. I don't know what the truth is, what can be done these days. It's one possibility, but I do know that this is a radical idea, but why not conquer Mexico, Central America, and South America, kick the bums out, send them back to Europe, and take the ones who consider themselves native Indians of South America, Central America, Mexicans, stick them on reservations and secure the entire North American, South American continents, and just have a fortified series of continents, in Middle America, North America, South America. That's one way to go about it too. That's more of a conquest ideology, I suppose. But If you, in the process of doing such a thing, decide to establish a god or a pantheistic sort of divinity society, something that abandons democracy, more or less back to square one again. You might as well have left the South Americans, the Central Americans, the Mexicans where they were. Right? So what kind of country do you want to be? Do you want to worship the cunt? Or do you want to worship the phallus? Or do you want to worship a god? Do you want to worship gods? Do you want to have none of the above and have laws as your principal modus operandi? What do you want as a society? Do you want democracy? Do you want monarchy? What do you want? I think democracy, being, as I've said in previous recordings, the only jewel in the jewel box, apart from some soiled linen and some used condoms and some revolting devotional items that were made out of soot, ash, and I suppose fecal matter to resemble men, women, and a variety of other deities and things. I think the jewel in the box is democracy myself, and I think that's the way to go. In light of the senselessness of the violences that have been manufactured and tormented and exterminated again and again and again all over the world, if you went to South America and just wandered through one of the boroughs of, I don't know, Sao Paulo or something, found this gray monkey that was half human, and then you found out it happened to be maybe, I don't know, Supreme Court Justice Richard, what's his name? Richards, isn't it? I can't remember his name. Or maybe, Ron Paul, is that his name? I can't even remember their names anymore, What would you call a half monkey senator from the state of Missouri, who was half monkey? Is he? But he has the memories and all the memories and what have you. Many of the characteristics of a senator from Missouri, but he's a gray, hairy half monkey who's jumping around like a lunatic all over the place in just on the outsides of Sao Paulo. Is it him or isn't it? Who is the senator from Missouri? Does anybody care? Do we care who the senator of Missouri is? Enjoy yourself. Have a sambuca. Have a plate of Alfredo. Have some frutti di mare. It doesn't matter. The life is meaningless. The gods, they were eating us for centuries. They're meaningless. We are meaningless. Life is meaningless. Let's all just kill each other and fuck and enjoy ourselves and think there's no consequences to actions, no consequences to behavior. Just indulge in this nihilistic moral relativism, the teeming masses of multicultural insanity that has been going on in the United States for years, with the teeming masses pouring in left, right, and center, doing nothing more than trying to cash in on the hot money to be made from picking up the DNA of any beautiful woman in the United States and getting her back, I suppose, through a little bit of hand play, cross someone on the street, just shake his hand, then you've got her DNA in your hand, stick it in your pocket, rub it on some cloth or something, and get those blood cells out, get across the border, make her, fuck her, breed with her, I suppose, kill her maybe if you like, bring her back, kill her again, fuck her, get her pregnant, maybe 5,000 times over. Hot money to be made, boys and girls, hot money. Lots of money. Get across the border, get their fucking DNA, bro. Get their DNA, dog. Get it back to Mexico, we'll have a great time. If you desire to conquer Mexico, Central America, and South America, you'd have to have a good reason for it, wouldn't you? You'd have to have an excuse to do something like that. It would have to be something that's so disgusting, so overwhelmingly repulsive, that there'd be irrefutable justification for conquering their countries, conquering their lands, kicking the bums out, even going so far as putting bullets in their head on a mass scale and putting them down, sending the bums back to Europe, the Roman Catholics, who were nothing more than imperialists. Probably not even Roman. What do you call a nihilist who's an imperialist? I think you call him a wacko, quite frankly. But anyway, I'm just discussing probabilities, discussing hypothetics. one day there'll be someone who'll take these chicken scratchings in audio and develop a theory, some sort of political, militaristic theory for finding justifications for conquering other countries.
Wildfires in Texas. Tamara Keith and Amy Walter break down the latest political immunity. Prosecutors say they were meant to silence Mr. Cohen.
It's great, so we're trying to stay on top of those, make sure they stay out.
Reminds us of Henry Kissinger's dictum that you can be, that to be an enemy of the United States is very dangerous, but to be a friend of the United States can be fatal. And I think
about a young woman who was killed in an incident that involved someone who was in the country illegally.
There's $80 billion of money left on the table every single year because
get you. So maybe that's considered mental fortitude.
In recognition of women both in front of and behind the camera. Then, a new book re-examines the relationship between Saddam Hussein and the U.S. across 4 administrations. U.S. and Saddam Hussein. And the conservative push to give fetuses legal rights. Will pay. Actress Taraji P. Henson, who's in the Oscar,
responsible for that success.
speaking of
Towards quote-unquote diverse audiences.
Game. And we assured him
2003, the U.S. invasion of Iraq was based
vision of Iraq. Steve Call, thank you. Kuwait's wealth.
The issue of whether IVF is banned or not is really new. It's not something that is that.
Saddam Hussein, the CIA, and the origins.
See some copycats of anti-abortion politicians and state.
The problem is as pervasive in Hollywood as it is in every other industry in this society. I think that it's the only difference is that the entertainment industry is a lot more visible, but
it's kind of like I have a journal that I wrote down.
In an entire extended back and forth about this very topic. And, it became.
Or has no way to verify that claim.
What did she do?
She went into farmers and ranchers in the Texas Panhandle.
Killer.
Let's bring in our politics money.
Capacity to inflict punishment on a well-armed force.
And have been treated badly. And
You safe, that this thing you're worried about, I'm going to be tough. And Biden.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a last-minute trip to Jamaica today.
So, that is stressful.